Friends in the archive, I'm going to have to make this part 2 because our live streaming encoder crashed on us a few moments ago. So I was able to get it right back up, right back on. I won't be able to put one contiguous video into the archive for the video stream. So this is part 2. We're picking up where I left off. I was just reading to you verse 12 of Revelation 14, and this is basically the same. This is the same verse. It's just behind it. If you can see it there real faintly, I have an eagle with its 2 wings spread out very widely here. Again, this verse reads, "And to the woman, to the church, to the faithful, to the Philadelphia era who are following Christ's instruction in Luke 21:36, watching the world news, praying deeply from the bottom of your heart, always, every day, several times a day." And he promises those of you who do that will be accounted worthy to escape the next major event in prophecy, the 5th seal from the book of Revelation, which Jesus Christ called in plain language the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, a time of, as it was mentioned in Jeremiah 30, verse 7, a time of Jacob's trouble, and a time that both in Jeremiah 30 and in Matthew 24 by Christ are said to be the greatest time of trouble since the beginning of the world. Now, with no time of trouble ever being as bad as what's coming, no, nor ever shall be. There's only one time that can be the worst time of trouble ever, and it's called Jacob's trouble, and it's also called the Great Tribulation, which is a time period of the next major prophecy to come. And you can escape it, and that's what that verse says. Now, let's go on quickly, and I got an eagle there for you, because, again, that verse tells us that the church will be flown, symbolically flown, on 2 wings of a great eagle. Now, I say symbolically. God certainly has the option whenever he does a symbol, if he wants to do it literally, if he wants to have eagles come and pick up each one of you who are accounted worthy by its claws or by its beak or whatever. He could do it literally like that. Or he could let that symbolically represent a chariot of fire. Or he could allow that to represent modern physical aircraft, with even the government saying, "You people, get out of here," and being flown to some place that winds up being gets you over there to where God's going to count you worthy to escape. But to me, more likely, it's got to be by some miraculous way, either a literal big, huge eagle, which God could do it that way, or that could be, as I mentioned, symbolic of him doing it some other way, chariot of fire, or however. God's got the options open. And this is the place. I had this little simple map drawn up by a fellow overseas. I forget what area he's from at the moment, but Mabelma, artist I use, he did the graphic of Pope Francis on that white horse with the European stars around him and the bow in his hand and all that. He did this one for me, showing Israel on one side of that Dead Sea and the waterway from the Dead Sea and upward from there on up to the Lake Tiberias. And on just the east side of that waterway, now we've rotated it sideways to fit this 16:9 ratio format, but just on the east side of that waterway, you see there the biblical areas mentioned in Daniel 11:40 and 41 of the land of the children of Ammon, Moab, and Edom. And just below Edom, you see there a little dot with Petra right there. All of that area is protected from the reach of the beast during the Great Tribulation. And that area's on the Jordanian side, the Jordan side of that waterway, from the Dead Sea to Lake Tiberias, and Israel's on the other side of it. And so you'd be escaping into Jordan, or being flown by that great eagle, the 2 wings of a great eagle. Okay, now, friends, I think now we can get into this first news story. Relates very much to this story I just gave you about France preparing this UN resolution that'll probably be presented in New York in September, on September 15 this year. And I pulled this story from yesterday's news because French and the U.S. are working together. The French have already done many things against Brother Judah. And eventually it's said that both Ephraim and Manasseh, the UK and the U.S., will turn tail against Israel. That's a prophecy in the Bible. And we're beginning to see the undergirding of that already starting to work. But in this story, friends, this replica warship Hermione arrives in Yorktown, U.S. It's an exact replica of an 18th century French frigate, and it's completed its maiden voyage, recreating a historic transatlantic journey to America. The original Hermione ferried General Lafayette to the United States in 1780, where he revealed that France would help America in its Revolutionary War against the British. The reconstruction of this replica ship has taken 2 decades to complete. They really did an all-out job on this, and interesting, the time of the completion is right as the United States is holding hands with France against Brother Judah with this UN resolution they're drafting now with a delegation from the White House in Paris to help the French with the drafting of that resolution, which means as they help them, that means they're going to support it, and President Obama is not going to veto it. So it's going to be passed. But this replica took 2 decades to complete at a cost of about 20 million euros. And we do have a video report on this, I understand. No, we don't. So I want to thank Lucas de Jong for the information on this. Let me test something. Let's see. Do we have video or don't we?
Surrounded by its more modern sisters, it's hard to believe that a ship so striking could be called a copy. Flying the French and American flags and filled with a crew of duly dressed volunteers, the Replica Hermione is a ship that 235 years ago made the same arrival in America, all to rally rebels who are fighting for their independence. 7 weeks ago, the ship left France, surrounded by fanfare, to make its way across the Atlantic. It's been built using only 18th century shipbuilding techniques. All those masts, all that rigging, and all those hours of labour were not a cheap or easy feat. It took more than $27 million to fund and 20 years to build, all for the love of history, sailing, and this man, General Lafayette, the French hero of the American Revolution, the man who brought French support to America in their time of need. The journey isn't over though. The Hermione will now travel the east coast of the US to cement itself as a symbol of French-American relations. Still strong after 235 years. Lucas de Jong, BBC News.
Okay, thank you for that report, Lucas. And friends, I told you I'd be telling you about, and I believe we do have some video on this also, about an earthquake that occurred on Friday, just 2 days ago. Climbers stranded for 24 hours on Mount Kinabalu in Borneo. Malaysian search teams have recovered the bodies of 13 people from one of Southeast Asia's highest mountains, Mount Kinabalu in Borneo, after an earthquake triggered rock falls there again on Friday, just 2 days ago. The victims include a 12-year-old Singaporean schoolgirl. Rescuers are still searching for 8 others who are missing. Southeast Asia editor Jill McGovering reports.
For 24 hours, these climbers were stranded high on the region's tallest mountain. Now they're finally safe. What started for many as a tourist trek ended in disaster. More than 130 people became trapped on the mountain on Friday when the powerful earthquake struck. Details are still emerging of those who survived and those who did not. Some of the dead were children, including a 12-year-old girl from Singapore. Rescue efforts have been hampered by bad weather, and rockfalls made some routes impassable. Local people say this was the worst earthquake for decades. Many here are still in shock. And Mount Kinabalu, a leading tourist attraction, is changed forever. Jill McGivering, BBC News.
Okay, Jill, thank you very much. Jill finished that a little faster than I thought she would. I was reviewing something else here. I've got friends, our last story tonight will relate to the first seal from the book of Revelation, depicted as a white horse that Jesus Christ described in plain language as religious deception, saying that many would come in the name of Jesus, and yet they would deceive many. And what happened here, friends? Sorry, there we go. Okay. This next story, get the right story up here, involves something from Pope Francis' travels. Pope Francis called for reconciliation efforts to continue on a visit to Bosnia-Herzegovina. He denounced those who create and maintain a climate of war in the world. The Pope celebrated Mass in front of tens of thousands of Catholics at a football stadium in the capital, Sarajevo. And we have video report from this with Guy Deluni.
Bosnia's leaders are famously fractious, but harmony reigned during the Pope's visit. A Catholic ethnic Croat to his right, Orthodox Serb and Bosniak Muslim on the left. Bosnia's three presidents reflect the main ethnic groups, a legacy of the peace settlement 20 years ago. Politics here remains complicated. Ethnic leaders can rarely agree on anything. That's holding the country back. But Pope Francis sees reasons for optimism.
It is a reason of joy for me to be in this city that has suffered throughout bloody conflicts throughout the previous century, but that has become a place of dialogue and peaceful coexistence, and has shifted away from a culture of clashes and war.
The Pope's joy was shared by tens of thousands of Bosnians. They crammed into Sarajevo's largest football stadium for an open-air mass and to hear Francis condemn those who seek to profit from conflict.
You know this well, having experienced it here. How much suffering, how much destruction, how much pain. Today, dear brothers and sisters, the cry of God's people goes up once again from this city, the cry of all men and women of goodwill. War never again.
It's a sentiment that rings true for Bosnians, almost 20 years on from the end of their conflict. And if the Pope's visit helps the country to move forward, that would answer many people's prayers. Guy Delornay, BBC News.
And friends, that's it for this Sunday night report here on Nightcast. God willing and the creek don't rise, we'll be back again tomorrow night, Monday night, with the day's current news related to the Bible and prophecy. Until next time, your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying so long and good night, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on COGTV.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the COGTV.org video archive.